John Rogers, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Paul. Glad to be here.
I said this in the intro, but I know that we have a brief history of being in youth ministry together.
Yes.
You got smart and left, and I'm still here. You have left me behind.
You've been left behind.
I've been left behind.
Yes, absolutely.
But yeah, we've seen each other at conventions. We've had lunches together. We've seen each other in and out throughout the years. And so I want people to know, I know we'll talk about your current adventure towards the end, but I want people to know you as John, the youth pastor. What was that? How did we get there? How did we get to youth ministry?
So I'll give you the Reader's Digest version, but basically when I was a child and even a teen, was volunteering all across the church world. It started off as a 7th grader volunteering with preschool VBS, and then just kind of stepped up in age groups from there, volunteering at different places in the local church, at my church rec center, day camps, and all the things. In college, I worked for a Christian summer youth camp, one of the ones that is hosted at, like conference centers and universities and stuff. I had the chance to interact with a lot of different youth pastors from around the country and get to know their youth groups as well, ones that would come and volunteer alongside the summer staff. I did that for 6 summers and went to seminary after I finished my undergraduate degree and was just sort of praying through that whole process. And then just kind of in hindsight, saw God placing me in particular moments throughout my, story of life, as it were, and realized that he had called me to congregational youth ministry specifically. And, so since, all those things have happened, I've worked in youth ministry full-time, part-time, multi-vocational, volunteer, interim, camp ministry. So a little bit of everything in there in the world of youth ministry, and did that for around 20 years.
Golly, John, I didn't know you were in that long. Wow.
Yeah.
You're old. You're not as old as me though, but
I don't look it, but
that's right. You take care of yourself. Whereas me, clearly look at me. I've
I don't know.
That's where I'm the poster child for had I known I was going to live this long, I'd have taken better care of myself. So I am that. Just look that up, and I should be right there in the picture. So today we're talking about trips. We're talking about youth ministry trips and what makes for a good trip. What are some elements of that? You have I'll let everybody listening and watch right now. There's going to be a free gift at the end that we're going to give you guys to help you plan your traveling and all that. So stick around for that. But I'd like to know, John, can you tell me about a trip that you planned, in quotation marks, you planned, but it did not go quite the way you thought it was going to go, and maybe some reasons why that trip did not go. We have all had them, by the way. I want to point that out, that I have my fair share of them, so we're not doing whatever. So just tell me about a trip maybe you did in youth ministry that you said, wow, that didn't go quite like I thought it was going to.
Do you want me to talk about that time I left a kid at the truck stop on a retreat camp? Or I mean, just kidding.
We've all done that, by the way, too. I left my own daughter. Can I just confess? I left my own daughter at a convenience store. We were on it wasn't a long trip. It was like a trip, but we were walking. It was like a walkathon, and everybody had left, and I thought the store was cleared out, and there's my daughter left behind. So there's my terrible story, not planning well.
At least it was your own daughter, and
that's right.
I guess it could have been worse.
I could have sued myself.
But as far as something that didn't go well, I don't know. I've always kind of been a planner. I mean, I could talk about the one time I planned a trip, the first time a youth group did a spring break trip, and everybody was like, parents and the rest of the staff and even some students were like, yeah, that sounds really awesome. But when push came to shove, no one signed up. So nobody signed up whatsoever. So I had to kind of cancel that. Beforehand. I could talk about the one time my very first trip as a full-time youth pastor, had planned everything well, so I thought, but in this particular incident was outside of my control. It was a ski trip. So yay, ski trips, right?
Yay, I love ski
Yeah,
trips.
well, we'll go with that. Lots of relationship building opportunities. Um, we were in West Virginia for this particular one, and this was like the last night. So everybody's like staying up late. They have night skiing. They have lights on the slopes, and everybody's just going hard and having a blast and everything. And it's like, I don't know, 9:15 or 9:30, and the slope shut down at like 10. So most people were on their last run of the night. Well, I'm like skiing down and like waving to kids and stuff and having a good time. And I get to the bottom of the mountain, and all of a sudden I get a phone call from Ski Patrol, and I'm like, uh-oh, this is
Oh
not good.
no.
They're like, yeah, do you know so and so? And I'm like, yeah, well, they're up here with Ski Patrol, and I'm like, oh, geez.
Mm,
So they're like, he's had an accident and probably needs to go to the hospital. And I'm like, oh, wonderful, this is great. So the guy that ended up like breaking his arm, and he was, for a kid his age, he was essentially a golf prodigy. He was really good at golf
oh,
on
yeah.
his like school golf team and all the things. And I'm like, oh, great, this is going to be a fun conversation. So everything ended up being fine, but it just kind of the wheels fell off in that moment, like essentially right before we were due to end the trip.
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
had one time going to youth camp in the summer. We were driving a little dually 15 passenger church bus, and had one of our tires blow up and went like it blew up so forcefully it cracked the wheel well on the church bus. And there's a kid sitting above it, and like came out of his seat and like cracked his head on the luggage rack above him. And this was in the middle of Metro Atlanta. As if anybody listening to this, or you are familiar with Spaghetti Junction, it's where 285 and Interstate 85 meet on the kind of northern end of Atlanta. And we were coming off the interstate, and we were kind of in between one of the on ramps and the through traffic for the interstate, and kind of sandwiched in this one little area, and had to limp like down the interstate, escorted to a Walmart. And
Yeah.
it was just a crazy thing.
Oh
So
no.
most of the things that have gone wrong for me are those unexpected things you can't plan for.
Right. And I had, it's funny. I think anybody that's, I went on a ski trip and I had a girl break her leg, and we may have been at the same place. I don't know if did you go to Snowshoe?
No, we were
Because,
at Winter Place.
oh, Winter Place. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. We did. I've been to Winter Place and I've been to Snowshoe. So both of
Yep.
them are great spots, by the
Yeah.
way. But I've had a girl break her leg, and that was my phone call that I got
Sure.
come down the mountain. I will tell you this though, there's a time that I had scheduled Night of Joy, which used to be a big, huge music festival
Mhm.
at Disney World.
Yep.
And I had planned, there's 3 adults and about 20 some odd students. 7, right? It was 7-to-1 ratio, probably a little high, but we were all going. And at that very moment, I got a phone call that my wife went into labor.
Oh,
I couldn't
great.
cancel. I couldn't cancel the trip, so I sent 2 adults and 20 some odd kids to Disney World. So I'm like, I probably, and this was in my younger days, so like
Yeah.
I probably should have had more adults. I didn't have enough adults, right? So
Right.
there are things, but you did bring up a good point, John. Is the very first thing you started with was not getting kids signed up for a trip, right?
Yep.
If there's a trip, a good trip
Hmm.
starts with people signing up for the trip,
Sure.
right? Because it
Yeah.
gives you momentum, right? All those other things that we experience are somewhat they're beyond our control, but there are things that are within our control, such as when we start sign up,
Hmm.
getting kids signed up, momentum, and all that kind of good stuff. So now let's move into that phase where, listen, there's trips that you planned really well. I want you to brag on yourself a little bit.
Hmm.
A trip that you planned it, you were intentional about it, and it was a great trip because you paid attention to some details that maybe other youth pastors could really grab onto and go, yeah, we should pay attention to that.
Yeah, sure. So I guess I could think of some from where my current line of work, but also in youth ministry specifically. This was not the same um, summer camp trip, but we were definitely going out of town by about 10 hours. We were headed to camp to stay at Winston-Salem. And we were, so driving from North Alabama there is a pretty decent haul. So one of the things we had to do was, okay, what are our stops going to look like? What sort of flex time are we going to build in? How early are we going to leave? What time do we need to tell people to actually be there versus what time to leave and load and all those things versus, what time are we actually going to pull out? So what do I actually tell people, right? To get them to show
Exactly.
up so we
Right.
can leave when we need to leave. So I always start from there, especially because a lot of our camp trips mean early morning departures because registration for a lot of youth camps is typically after lunch between like 1 and 3 or something like that. So and a lot of times you don't want to necessarily add to the cost of say another night's hotel or additional food or whatever the case may be. So 5:30, 6 o'clock departures are pretty common. And we've had kids sleep through alarms, parents sleep through alarms, and all those sorts of things. So how do you deal with that? What sort of ground rules do you put in place? And I find, most of the time you only control what you can control, what you can control. And that is for us, what time can I turn the key in the van to pull out of the parking lot? And what does it take to get there? So you can't always depend on people to show up on time. If they do, great. Embrace that mess and and run with it. So going to camp in North Carolina was an early departure for us, and that meant planning out our stops. I think we stopped in Asheville for lunch and ate at like a Moe's Southwest Grill or something like that. And then we went on to camp, had a great week of camp. We actually had enough adults that time, which was great. And because we wanted to do something kind of, I don't know, new to bring back some, I don't know, fun things. We went to Carowinds. It's right there on the border of North Carolina and South Carolina, not terribly far. I think I want to say Charlotte. Not terribly far from where we were at camp. I want to say it's like 45 minutes or an hour long drive. But Winston-Salem is also the corporate headquarters to Krispy Kreme donuts. So we went by Krispy Kreme while we were there. I was like, guys, I don't know if we can get into the HQ or not, but we're going to Krispy Kreme, whatever it is. So we left time to do all these things. And these are things that took planning, took conversations with parents and looking at the budget and figuring out where the money's going to come from and, marketing these things. It's selling these things. We don't like to think about, youth camp necessarily as a sales experience, but essentially you're marketing yourself, you're marketing the event, you're marketing what you're going to get out of that. And it sounds kind of weird to cross like ministry and marketing and sales, but when you boil it down, you're trying to get people to come and do stuff. And what is it going to take to get there? And what is your why? That is big for me in my life. What is your why? Why are you doing what you're doing? In our case with youth camp, it was hoping kids would, have changed lives and experience salvation and grow in their relationships with the Lord and have opportunities to serve. And we did all that. We accomplished those things, but in the same vein, we wanted to have opportunities to build relationships. And we did that by, going to Carowinds, which is owned by Cedar Fair, so massive amusement park, company. And we had a blast doing it. We, we had some money kind of left over from fundraising. So I used that to book a one-night hotel stay on the way back so we could just kind of slow down, let what we experienced in camp marinate over us, talk about those experiences, and have a little fun while we were doing it on the way back. And everyone was fully in support of that. And we had an absolute blast. We ended up we asked the hotel for recommendations. This is kind of funny. We asked the hotel for recommendations on where to eat. So, North Carolina, great place to grab some barbecue. We're like, so
sure.
Where can we go to get some more barbecue? And they like listed a few places. And I was like, well, this place is the closest. Let's just go there. Well, unbeknownst to me, it's like a cross between like a biker bar and a barbecue joint. So here we are, we pull up. This is a quasi fail, but not really. We pull up in the church van and like everybody loved it. We had fun, but I'm like, oh geez, like I'm gonna get fired for this. Somebody's gonna like whatever just because of some of the stuff that was out. But everything was fine. Like we had fun, and a lot of kids, grew, and it was a smaller group that year, but it's a great memory and a great opportunity. I think a milestone for some of the people that went, for sure.
Yeah, and you brought up so many good points. And in fact, you led right into where we're going next is you're offering 10 free travel tips.
Yes.
And one of those you just mentioned,
Yep.
we mentioned two, one was plan well, and
Yes.
number two was remember your why.
Yep.
And that's on there. And I want you to give me two or three more. Let me go ahead and can I pick? I'll pick two, and I'll let you pick one that you want to talk about.
Sure.
Okay. Tell me about specific needs. Why?
Specific.
Why? Yeah. Why is that on the list?
So I think that's on the list because you've got to understand your group. So the people that are coming with you and what you're going to be doing. And it's like sometimes we have our mindset, okay, we're going to camp and we're going to have some fun, play some games, serve some people, go to some worship services, stay in some stinky college dorms or questionable retreat centers or whatever it may be, and you eat powdered eggs and just and country time lemonade and just have a blast doing it, right?
Yes.
We get so focused on the doing sometimes we forget about the who. And what is going. So who is making up the group that are going? Who are the adults that are going? Do you know them? Do you know where their relationships with the Lord are at? Not like in a judgmental sort of way, but do you know where they're at? What's the role of God playing in their life right now? How can you minister to them? How can you partner with them? So know your adult leaders, know your parents with the kids, if there are parents and guardians in the home. Because more often than not, we'll run across foster children and others that are at youth camp. So we don't necessarily, you can't assume that everybody has a parent at home or everybody has two parents at home, let alone one necessarily. So understanding who is going. Do your kids have any specific allergy needs? Yeah, we like to joke around about the gluten-free and the peanut allergies and all these things, but until you've experienced it yourself, or you have people that are close to you that have experienced, like, we take those things seriously. It's a way that we can minister to those people and saying, yes, you do belong here, and not just, oh, we're inclusive, let's include everybody, but we are ministering to these people by providing for their needs and getting to know them and showing them that we're serious about getting to know them. Are there any mobility issues? Do your kids, take the kids that are going, or even adults necessarily, have any specific medical issues? Are there any, medications involved for anybody that's traveling? So really looking at the small things that make up the people that are going. And then what are the physical, but mainly like spiritual needs? Like what are those that are there that the kids, the students that you have going with you, the adults, what do they need and how can you meet those needs? What can you do to create an environment of belonging and acceptance to where the field will be ripe for them to grow. Maybe it means wrestling with some tough issues that they've got going on. Maybe it means embracing something that they thought they weren't, or letting go of things that they're not. So, just getting to know the people and walking alongside them and being as Christ to them is important.
Yeah, and that, boy, I tell you what, that's worth the whole show right there. I mean, you unpacked one of the 10 on this list, and that's worth the whole show, John.
Sure.
Just specific needs. Think about it. And I love that point too. I had not thought about that, but I've had kids before who were in foster, either in foster care or in a foster home, who came along that maybe I was unaware of that. And yes, those are special needs. I also had, I had a girl with diabetes who I had to make sure, right? I say, hey, have you taken your shot? Right. These somebody, if not yourself, an adult on your team has to be able to facilitate this and make sure that medication's available, make sure there's something sweet like a Coke or something for that person that they need if in fact they have an episode or something like that.
Sure.
So that one right there is worth everything. But let me just cover one more here. And I see that you have pack a go bag.
Yeah.
Pack a go bag. What is it?
Pack
what
a
is
go
it?
bag.
Yeah. And who is that for?
This is for everybody. And I think regardless, in the go bag has some kind of basic core elements to it, I think. But and I'll list some of those here in a second, but depending on what the trip you're taking is, may depend on what is in the go bag. So this is the kind of thing, and this is just what I call it. You may call it something else. And these are things that a lot of you may already have. But the first thing that comes to mind is a first aid kit. You don't necessarily need like the fishing tackle box of Band-Aids and in Walmart brand Advil and Tylenol and Benadryl that expired 3 years ago because you only ever use the thing for camp or whatever it is. But like, just get something basic, right?
Yeah.
And have those conversations, preparatory conversations with your volunteers. Make lists. I hate lists. I really do. I despise them.
Oh,
But having lists actually helps me. It helps me tune in to where we're at, and then make a folder on your Notes app, Evernote, Google Drive, Dropbox, whatever you got, things that you can go back to be like, what have I put in here in years past? What do I need this time? And what don't I need this time? Because you don't necessarily want to haul around stuff that you just don't need. Simple things to put in there. Like a small, like, portable, like, first aid kit with a few band-aids and some antiseptic wipes and all those kinds of things, maybe some Advil or Tylenol. I would also say have a conversation if you have females going, have a conversation with your female chaperones to see if there are any feminine hygiene products that you need, because that's a need. I can tell you the number of times I've made a midnight Walmart run to pick up tampons or pads. I mean, it happens. And they're like,
you're right.
Will you go and pick up? Do you mind? I'm like, look, I'm married. I have 4 kids. It's fine. Like,
That's right.
tell me what you need. We'll make it happen.
That's right.
But so those kinds of things. And again, you don't have to pick a lot of these things. I would also say even like electrolytes. So in summer, especially summer camp, whether it's like a little Propel or a liquid IV or something like that, like even like a sugar-free Gatorade powder, the individual things that you can mix in, because you tell people to hydrate and drink their water or whatever if you're outside serving or they're out on the rec field, but they don't always listen to you. And it's pretty huge if like you have something that you can give them immediately to perk them back up, because if you're not hydrating well during those activities, that's a big deal. I would also have a list of emergency contacts as well. Most people probably have something on their phone or in a binder or tablet or something like that, or physical folder, but having like a very basic like paper of emergency contacts, phone numbers for the parents, where your local hospitals are, all those kinds of things. Sometimes camps and conferences will supply some of that to you. If so, great. But make sure you have those things with you at all times. And then I would also definitely include a couple of different charging cables for, like a lightning cable for people that have iPhones, and maybe a USB-C if you're like an Android person, and at least one, well charged, maybe a couple of ports, like a portable USB power thing, because your chaperones might need it. If you let your kids have their phones, they might need it for whatever reason. And the phone conversation is a separate conversation we could dedicate a whole episode to, I'm sure. But
sure. And I like what you said though about having parents' names, phone numbers, because if a student is in my case, I have had students in the past where they were having issues, behavioral issues, and sometimes I just have to ring it up. I gotta have that. I gotta have those foresee ahead. Who are you going to have on speed dial? Which parent, special, maybe those parents that have special needs kids. You want to have them on speed dial, so have that in your phone. But also, if you know that there's going to be, it could possibly be a behavioral issue, not necessarily because they're intentional, but maybe they're young or something like that. But have those phone numbers in your phone already, just to have them on go.
Yeah. And I think like the key is with a go bag is not overloading yourself. When you travel with a group of any size, I think you feel a natural tendency to like be prepared for every eventuality. And you got to carry all your stuff. You got to have your tablet, your phone, your computer. You got to have your 3-inch thick binder of all the forms and all the things. I mean, use your smartphone if you have that to take pictures of everything, so you can just pull it up manually, leave the folder or whatever in your room in a van place where it's locked and it's going to be safe. And I would say pack light, so it's something you could easily just grab and go, and all your necessities are there. So I would say also, especially for like camp and youth events, maybe some note cards and pens, just something simple, because you never know when you might have an opportunity to use those, or when a kid's like, I don't have anything to write with. So
there you go,
that never happens.
I was going to say too, when you're on these trips. So let me ask this: fanny pack or no fanny pack?
It depends on how you wear it.
How should one wear it?
Well,
I'm asking for a friend, John. I'm asking for a friend. Fanny pack or no? How do you
I
wear
think
them?
these days the kids wear it like a sling bag almost, like kind of
Okay.
across their chest. So more so than around their waist.
Okay.
So and fanny pack means I think something else in another country, but
Oh wow. Maybe
yeah,
maybe one across the
yeah, like a
chest, maybe like a
crossbody sort of
bandolier.
thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's probably that's a good thing. You don't want to be, by the way, I've had and I've been on mission trips where I'm wearing the fanny pack
yep,
and my kids are taking pictures and they're of course, unbeknownst to you, they are just
yep.
blowing you up
Oh yeah,
on somebody's feed and saying, "Hey, look at Pastor Paul's fanny pack. Oh, he's cool."
just embrace it.
Not. That's right. Just embrace
Embrace the
it.
awkwardness.
That's right.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's exactly it.
good.
All right. So I'm going to let you pick now. I've picked two. Give me one more off this list that you say, you know what? Pay attention to this one.
I will say I'll actually give you um kind of a
Don't get
bonus
now.
here.
Oh, I was going to say, you give me a bonus. Go ahead.
So this is sort of my, I don't know, we've kind of already talked about one of these. I'll give you my sort of secret sauce for travel planning. Are you ready? This is it.
Okay.
Just this is it. This will make or break your trip. That is this: plan well, but be flexible. Plan
Oh,
well, but be flexible. Okay. So you want to, have all the forums, make all the phone calls, have all the conversations with the parents and where you're going, and make sure the vehicles are lined up, and making sure your kids are safe and they're going to be fed and they're getting up at the right time. They're going to where they need to be. They're going to bed at the right time, hopefully, and all those sorts of things. You want to handle all the logistics. But what happens, like I was talking about earlier, what happens when you have a kid that breaks their arm? You got to go to the emergency room. What happens when you have a tire blow up in the middle of the interstate and you've got three other vehicles following behind you? What happens if there's like a medical, a different medical emergency, or something happens at the camp, the power goes out? So there are all these sorts of eventualities that you hope don't happen, and you try to plan to be prepared for a lot of them, but at the same time you're still the leader of your group. People are going to look to you and how you react in those sorts of situations, whether you like it or not. They will. So if you're mad and upset and you're angry, they're going to see that and they're going to play off of that. If you're forward thinking and you're like, okay, this has happened, this is what we're going to do, and you're following those steps, they're going to see that you've got your stuff together. Because remember, at the same time, when the unexpected happens, especially at a camp or retreat situation, or even maybe a more local event, kids and even adults are processing with stuff and they're dealing with things, and they need you to be as fully present as possible, and they need the other adults to be as fully present as possible, so we can be in tune with the Holy Spirit, what God's doing, and move forward. And if we're so caught up in the, oh my gosh, this has happened, what am I going to do? And we forget that, okay, this is an overused cliche, but God's got this. He does. His purpose is greater than ours. And
Yeah.
if we believe that and we embrace that, we've got to learn to be flexible. And this is something I'm speaking to myself here, because flexibility is something that I've struggled with as a ADHD kid. I get super hyper focused on things, and I'm like, oh, it's got to be this way, got to be this way, got to be this way. And when the unexpected happens, I'm like, oh my gosh, what do I do? Like, it just everything's a failure now. It's not.
Yeah.
And so plan well, be flexible, and then I think supporting that is remembering your why. If you can remember your why and stick to that and be flexible, I think you'll have a successful trip regardless of what happens, what comes your way.
Yeah. And you know what? And my brain and don't hate me, but I love lists. I'm a big list guy. In fact, it's going to be a part. I have a list. I created a list to go along with your list. That's going to be as
Fair
part of the
enough.
freebie.
Fair
As
enough.
part of the freebie, because I break down each one of your top 10 travel tips
Yeah.
that you're going to give. There'll be a link down in the description below that if you want this, and you do, because not only am I giving you a full list and questions and
Sure.
everything else that goes under each one of those, I'm actually going to do audio for it. So I'm actually going to read through it with you, make sure you're taking these steps. But one thing that you brought out here is my brain went to schedule, flexibility of schedule.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, that it can't, like me, I'm like, we got to be here. It's this time. It's got to be happening now. Why are we late? Why are we doing this?
Right.
And but there needs to be flexibility in the schedule as well, to where you're not so stressing yourself out to get to places and go do things. But you
Absolutely.
bring up emotional flexibility,
Mm-hmm.
that you have to be emotionally flexible
Yep.
during this trip, because you can already just plan and say, look, things are not going to go 100% your way. Something is going to occur, something. So you prepare
Yep.
yourself for it. It says, look, when this happens, not if it happens, when it happens, here's going to be my response to that. It's not going to
Right.
be reactive. It's going to be responsive in some way. If
Right.
a kid's late to the trip, if a leader does something stupid, if the place you went to, weather happens and something does and cancels out a thing, you, like you said, have to stay up for the benefit of the entire
Right.
group. Otherwise, if you're down, if you're angry, if you're disappointed, that spreads throughout the entire group.
Sure.
A-
Absolutely.
and I think that's such a great point about emotional flexibility. Well, listen, John, I want to get to this real quick. Once again, you are you're two things. I wrote down two things. You're an independent travel consultant, but
Yep.
you're also as a subtitle travel advisor. Tell me, because I want our audience to know, those that are both watching and listening, because you do such an effective job. I'm familiar with your work. You plan a lot of things. Tell me the types of things that you plan for people.
All right. So these days, yeah, the technical title is independent travel consultant. I don't like using the word travel agent. I mean, am I one? Yeah, but more of a travel advisor. I work from my home. This is my home office, and I'm often at a coffee shop or
Mhm.
somewhere as well, because I can't. I have trouble staying in one place, and it's actually easier for me to focus when there's a lot going on, sort of in an ambient way. So I'm out a lot, but the kinds of trips I book, I work with a lot of couples, families, even individuals, sometimes in groups of all kinds. I've helped churches with their mission trip details, things like, airfare, a group that just went to Alaska, one that went to Brazil recently,
Mm.
helping coordinate some of those things so they don't have to worry about it. Like, how do you book group air? How do you make sure that, everybody's on the same page is gonna, so how do all those things work? Like some places are very experienced. They know how to do all that, but um, you know, it can be helpful sometimes to kind of have somebody that you can go to when something happens in the field, so you don't have to be on the phone or whatever. Like, you have somebody back home handling it. But I do a lot of like honeymoon trips, birthday trips, graduation trips, those kinds of things, cruises, all inclusives, to a bunch of the, also send folks to the parks in Central Florida, to Universal and Disney, and even over on the West Coast as well, to Disneyland, and really all over the world. So it's not just theme park stuff. It's not just cruises, not just all inclusives, but Europe and everything in between. So if you can think about it, if it's a place that you can go and do something, we could help get you there. And most of the time, we don't actually charge extra planning fees either. There are very few instances where we do, but the vast majority of the time, you don't. So, like, for example, if Paul or anybody listening to this, you went online and you booked your own trip to go to, say, Walt Disney World, you're going to pay the same price if you were to do all the legwork yourself versus if you went through somebody like me. Hopefully me, but
Well, yeah.
you may have a travel advisor you're already working with, and if so, that's fine. And the funny story how I got into this in the first place was I needed an extra sort of side hustle sort of income because of some things that happened in my history of ministry, and that's a story for another day. I think most people in ministry have experienced some level of ministry
Mhm.
trauma.
Sure.
That's basically why I had to get a side job, and this was a natural thing because my wife and I were both have a background as cast members at Walt Disney World, and we were always kind of the go-to people for Disney travel planning for a while. And then one day she goes, "Why don't you get paid for this? I've got a friend that does." So I said, "Okay, that's a good idea. So why not? I'm doing it anyway. It's fun. I mean, I'm not going to say that I hate my job. I don't. I love it. It's great." Um, but it just grew into something more, and God made it apparent to me a couple of years ago that this sort of season of my life for now serving in congregational youth ministry was coming to a close. Not that I would in
Yeah.
this particular way.
Sure.
We're still at the same church. We're still volunteering, but that's a little bit of what I do and how I got there, and maybe a little bit what's going on now.
So if a group is saying, looks, and they're going on
Yep.
a missions trip to Florida
Hmm.
and they want a day, right?
Yep.
They want to plan a day. They want to go to the park. They say, we have a free day today, which you usually have
Sure.
for a mission trip.
Mhm.
You can say, look, they can call you or get in contact with you and say, hey, can you help us book a day to do all the parks?
Yeah, absolutely. For sure.
Because and correct me if I'm wrong, you can, there's little secret things too you do as
Mhm.
there's little extra bonuses when we talk about planning
Yeah,
a trip and adding little surprises and little things
sure.
that you can offer them.
Yeah.
Those are the
It
type of things you do as well.
yeah, it's not, what I do is not just transactional. It's not just, "Oh, I booked this for you," and then you go and
Yeah,
then you leave. Some people like to, micromanage their itineraries, and that's what you like to do, fine. That's fine. And I don't say that like negatively. There are a lot of people that like to do that. I like to do that. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing now. So
yeah,
that's totally okay. It's not about necessarily a control thing so much as it is having somebody there that has experienced a lot of these things personally, that knows the ins and outs, that is there for you again, so you don't have to, worry if something happens, like while you're there, you have a kid that gets sick or
yeah,
whatever.
yeah,
um you have somebody that can help you take care of the details, help you explore the options, that can
sure,
be there in your back pocket in case you need them. If you don't, that's fine. You're not paying
yeah.
anything extra for it in the case of Walt Disney World, or Disneyland for that matter. So,
Well, yeah. So if you are looking for somebody to help you, whether it's mission trips,
mhm,
special things, cruises, I mean, take
yep,
your youth group on a cruise. That'd be fun. But if you're looking for some of those things, I'm going to encourage you to get in touch with John.
yep,
It's like adding, listen to this, think about this for a second. He's planning something for you that you don't have to plan.
mhm,
You're adding somebody to your team
yep,
that you don't have to manage. You have somebody who's helping on your behest to do the things that you really want done. Somebody who understands groups, somebody who understands youth groups, somebody who understands the specialness of the
yep.
trip that you're taking. And so I'm going to encourage you to contact John and look him up and ask him, at least go in there and ask him some questions about what's available. Because some of you have trips planned right now. You say, I need some help. I need help with rooms. I need help with
Yep.
special locations. I need all of these things. John, where can people get a hold of you to ask you some of these questions?
Great question. So the easiest way to do that is if you just type in travelmationjohn.com. So travelmation, that's Mation with an M like Mickey. So travelmationjohn.com. It'll take you to my digital business card. There's an info form that'll pop up right there. You can put in your name, email address, and phone number. And then there's a little button you can click on to put in some notes. You could do that. I'm also on Facebook as well. I'm friends with Paul on Facebook, so you can find me that way through my personal profile. You could also search for Travelmation Team Rogers as well. So again, just travelmationjohn.com is the easiest way, I think.
And all of his information, or at least how you can contact him, is on the freebie that we're giving you today.
Yep.
So if you want to contact him, all that information is there. You're going to get the 10 free tips, travel tips. We didn't discuss all of them, but we alluded to many of them that are on the list. But you're also going to get the bonus list that I've created because I'm a list
Mhm.
guy and I'm trying to help you plan the best trip you can possibly plan. And I'm going to give you the audio of that as well. So it's something you can listen to as well as read. So reach out to him today, get the download. There'll be a link down in the description. John, thank you so much today for helping us plan the best missions trips, camp trips, fun trips that we can possibly plan. You've added so much value today, and I think the people that are listening and people that are watching just got excited about their trips.
Yeah, I hope so. And yeah, I would love to work with you guys and listen to you and hear more about your travel needs and how we could work together. Be great.
John, thanks for being on the show today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Paul. It's been a blast.